Hi, everybody. Mitch Sandbem here. Thanks for joining me today for the Security News Update. Lead story, big story, with the war that's going on in Iran. Iran launched missiles at critical infrastructure that they thought would hurt the United States, which includes things like military bases and oil refineries, and but also apparently in that list was Amazon data centers. And there are 3 data centers in the Mideast that are or at least were at one point in time offline. One of them looks like it's pretty bad. The thing about that, which is, we've known forever, I've talked about it before, is that basically Amazon saying, if something happens to one of our data centers, that's your problem, not our problem. And, as long as you understand that it's your problem, you're good. It means that, for example, if you have backups in that region, you won't be able to get to them. If you have other servers in different availability zone in that region, you won't be able to get to them. So, what they said is, whip out your very well thought through disaster recovery plan. Hopefully it's very well thought through, and start executing. This is very similar to what we saw with OVH when they had the fire in their data center outside of Paris. OVH being a European competitor to Amazon. They're not responsible for that. They give you the tools. It's up to you to go implement that. And to, some companies, and I'm sure in those Amazon data centers, there's probably, a couple of million websites. I'm sure some of the people there did a good job at implementing things, and other people there didn't do such a good job of implementing things. So don't know. But, I think this is a word to the wise, even though hopefully Iran is not going to blow up data centers in the United States. Stuff happens and they're not responsible. So you have to decide what gives you a level of comfort that you can sleep at night, in terms of fault tolerance, business continuity, disaster recovery. I mean, these guys are just basically those websites that were hosted there and servers that were hosted there, they just disappear off the internet instantly. And that's what happens when there's a massive failure. And we've seen, even in Amazon data centers, not caused by missiles, fires that take the data center offline. It's not their job to make that work for you. It's your job. Google's Gemini popped up a message, and I actually responded to the message before I thought it through far enough. I don't think it's a big deal in my case, but if you tell Gemini to remember your chats, then it makes it part of your Google Workspace account, assuming you're a Workspace user. And this only applies if you're a Workspace user. And that means that all of your chats are visible to your system administrator. So, think it through before you say yes to that. Make sure it's really what you want. In the AI alerts department, Anthropic's been having an interesting week. First, they get banned by the Pentagon, and then, they threaten to sue the government, all this stuff, right? But like 12 hours later, because Anthropic is in fact integrated in the Pentagon systems, they said, well, gee, we were only kidding. We're going to use you even though you're unreliable and a terrorist and whatever, nonsense story they made up about why they wanted to kick Anthropic to the curb. And they were heavily involved in the planning for this initial offensive. So kind of interesting. And then, of course, OpenAI came in, taking advantage of the fact that they thought there was an opportunity for them to make some money. And, of course, the internet catches these kind of things, and because they like signed an agreement, announced that they signed an agreement with the Pentagon like 12 hours after the Pentagon announced they were ditching Anthropic. Well, they had to be in the works. There's just no way that didn't happen in 12 hours. And then, initially there were reports that the same restrictions were in the OpenAI agreement as were in the Anthropic agreement. And then it turned out, well, maybe there's like loopholes in the language in this agreement. They're going to have to drive a Mack truck through. So all in all, just even Sam Altman had to admit this looked really sleazy, but it didn't stop him from doing it. It just said, look sloppy. Next, AI agents are easy to fool. And we've seen demonstrations of this. What some unscrupulous website operators are doing is they're putting prompts in the website, which if you have an agent running in your browser, it will detect these prompts, fire off on them, and possibly do some evil stuff, assuming that's what the website operator is inclined to do, like, delete your system partition or whatever. But just understand that if you let AI loose on your system, there could be some consequences. On the other hand, healthcare seems to be using AI very responsibly. I looked at some metrics from a report. Last year, the shadow AI usage was about 82% of the nodes analyzed. Now it's down to 32%. And organization managed AI was at about 12%. Now it's 56%. So, they're kind of doing what they should be doing. Interesting. Healthcare is often not a leader in these kind of things, but they are clearly being a leader here. Moving on to CMMC. For those of you who are involved with cyber contracts, they tend to be light on requirements for process. But it appears, rumor is, that all cyber contracts will require CMMC level 2, period. And in some sense, that makes sense because, that's the interesting stuff that you guys are working on. Next, I'm going to ask the question of, we did our CMMC level 2 self-certification, but now we're looking at changing our IT service provider. What's the impact of that? And the answer is basically you have to go back to ground zero and start over because their tools are different, their processes are different, their people are different. So that qualifies as a significant change. You have to reassess. So understand if you don't want to do a reassessment, and this is especially true if you are using a third-party assessor, if you don't want to have to reassess and pay the third-party assessor or your own team to do a lot of rework, you're stuck with that IT service provider for the duration, which is 3 years. And lastly, in the CMMC section, Transcom, the Transportation Command, and put out a memo saying basically that by the time you're watching this, everybody has to have attested in SPRS that they are CMMC level 1 compliant, and by a year from now they have to self-attest that they are level 2 compliant. Didn't say some, then didn't say maybe. It said everybody. So word to the wise. And I think we're going to see a lot more of these memos over time. Next, patches. Our dear friends in Cisco, they're about as challenged as Microsoft is for the same reason. The code base is old. They announced 48 new firewall vulnerabilities in their ASA firewalls and their secure threat to defense, which apparently is not so secure. 2 of those are rated critical, 9 are rated high. So if you use Cisco ASAs, it is time to patch. As I keep saying, now, not only does Homeland Security not have a leader, but since the president came into office, CISA has not had a leader. Now the person that the president had nominated to be CISA director, who is sort of the nominal de facto Coast Guard director, since Coast Guard is part of DHS, got walked out of the building by security last week. Not sure what that means. There's some spin going on there that makes no sense whatsoever. So the president said he's going to nominate one of the senators from Oklahoma to fill the DHS secretary position. His security background was that he was a mixed martial arts fighter who had 5 fights under his belt total, and he joined the Oklahoma National Guard at 44 and worked in logistics, and that's his apparent total security background. So it's unclear. There's a lot of mess going on. Folks in the Senate not happy with the president, and so I don't think they're going to get a new leader anytime soon. Sorry. I've talked about this before. Montana implemented a TikTok ban back in 2023. It was immediately blocked by the courts as unconstitutional. But now the ban is being, the lawsuit is being dropped because the law is being dropped because the law had a clause in it that said, well, if TikTok sold to an American company, then this ban doesn't apply now. You got to think about this, right? The reason that was claimed for why the ban was in place was to protect the children. Not clear why, if you change who's writing the checks, that children don't need to be protected anymore. But the reality was it had nothing to do with protecting the children. That was a bogus story. Under education, this one's one to pay attention to. A developer got a Google Gemini bill for $82,000, which Google basically says, sucks to be you, your problem, not ours. There were some credentials that used to be used as a indicator for billing. It didn't actually do anything, but it allowed you to go off and figure out how to track your bill. Well, it turns out because there's a shortage of bits in the universe, Google decided to basically reuse that flag and use it for other things like, AI. So now if you have this key, which nobody thought was sensitive, even Google didn't indicate it was sensitive, you can now spend buckets of money at Google doing AI stuff. And this developer discovered in 48 hours that these guys who stole their developer key were able to rack up an $82,000 bill. Problem. And Google said, go pay. I don't know what to tell you. So these guys are probably going to declare bankruptcy, go out of business, because they don't have $82,000 to pay. Breaches. The FBI, again, is in the news, and not in a good way. They were hacked again. They call it suspicious activity. It's on the network they use to manage wiretaps and Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Agency requests, FISA requests. This is the second major hack in the last 6 months. So not good for FBI. On the other hand, the FBI did arrest a kid who stole $46 million in crypto from the Marshal Service. Now, this is not a diss on the Marshal Service. They're good guys. They hired a contractor to go off and manage some recovered crypto from a criminal case. That contractor had a son. That son was a sleazeball and stole $46 million in crypto from his dad. He then went to St. Martin's and was living a high life with buckets of $100 bills. When the French police went down there with the FBI, they found all these buckets of money. Whoops. And they arrested the guy. How'd they arrest him? Well, this had nothing to do with great detective work by the FBI, the Marshal Service, and again, not to diss either one of them, but this guy is an idiot. He got into a pissing contest with another hacker on Telegram, and at one point went in there without turning his VPN on, and so we were able to discover what his real IP address is. From there, it kind of went downhill for him. Hate to say that, but anyway, he now has a compliments of the French special forces and the FBI a pair of stainless steel bracelets, and he's in prison. Next, let's talk about something. We've talked about technical debt for a long time, but let's talk about security debt. So that's technical debt specifically around security, and there's a lot of it. And you really do need to be tracking this so you can figure out how bad things are. I hate to say that, but that's the reality of it. So if you're not tracking security debt now, you definitely need to. If you don't know how to do that, give us a holler. We're happy to help you. AI attack kits go open source. So this is, I guess if you're a hacker, it's great. Technically, it's great. This is totally free and open source kit that addresses the entire kill chain from reconnaissance to exfiltration. It includes like 100 different tools in it, and it's free. Anybody can download it. Anybody wants to. So, not great. Not sure exactly what to do about that because once it's open source, it's not going to disappear. So I just warn you. And because this is AI driven, it's pretty powerful stuff. It's the privacy implications of smart eyeglasses. The people talk about smart eyeglasses like they're something really useful, and I get it. Maybe there is some kind of situation where it could be useful, but what they're doing now is they have human beings looking at these videos that the smart eyeglasses record to categorize them, and apparently some of these videos are pretty salacious, shall we say. Yeah. And so I guess the problem is that since you may or may not be the one who's wearing the glasses, if you're in a single party state and you're recording other people, you're probably legally safe unless you're doing something which is intimate, in which case you're not safe in any state. If you're in a two-party recording state, then you're not safe, even if the stuff is non-intimate. So just a bit of mess, and word to the wise, if you're wearing smart glasses, something to understand. And in the news bites, last but not least, Senator Wyden is off again. He's going to go off and block another another one of the president's nominees, and he basically says, "Look, if you guys don't do the things that we as Congress are asking you to do for oversight, we're just not going to do that." Now, the president said he's not going to sign any bills until he gets his whatever that bill is that he wants. But that really doesn't make much of a difference, because if the president doesn't sign it within 10 days, it becomes law anyway. And that's I'm sure he understands that and understand that there's more smoke than there is fire, but understand. Cyber Command is reported to have used its technical wizardry, which it has a lot of technical wizardry, to disrupt Iranian communications and sensors, which made it easier for us to go in there and not be detected and caught. Tech giants and Anthropic, they're friends all of a sudden. Even some of the lawmakers are friends. So we'll see where that all goes, but I'm sure there's a lawsuit and it'll be in court. Then who knows what will happen. The Iranian war could shake up. Dubai has got this influencer economy, which is kind of interesting. Influencers make a lot of money basically selling the wonderfulness of Dubai. Well, now since they've gotten dragged into this war, it's not so wonderful. The influencers are kind of freaking out, which just kind of exposes the whole insanity of this influencer world. But it could cost Dubai hundreds of millions of dollars in tourism. So I guess from that perspective, it is very real. And the state level data center tax rebates could be a thing of the past. At least it's certainly true in some states. They're realizing that there are not really the economic incentives that they thought would be there, and It just winds up being a gift to the rich. So some of the states are getting rid of them. For now, that's all. Thanks for listening. If you have questions, please reach out. And until next time, stay safe. Thanks.